So we get this question a lot from clients, right? They're building a brand or they're trying to expand distribution, and they come to us saying, where is my most sizable opportunity in retail? Where is my biggest white space in retail? And the fact of the matter is, 9 times out of 10, we're going to give you a calculation and we're going to rank those, and Walmart is going to be the first because it's based off of how big the category is, how much volume the store does, and what share you think you can achieve. And so, sometimes that's a great first retailer for brands. Sometimes they are ready to go national with Walmart. But, we want to pare this back a little bit and share with you some of the other considerations as you're building a distribution strategy. So, quick visual here, 2 ways that we've seen brands as they're rolling out their products, the crash and the quick build and then the crash and burn. And so we don't want any of our brands to see this. It's really exciting when you get engagement and buyers are excited. But, you're going to hear this a lot today. It's important to level set this against what can you do operationally? What can you spend on promotions? Where are your distribution centers? Where is your manufacturing currently? And then, of course, from a data side, which we're going to help you with today, identifying where is smart distribution, not just large distribution, because we want to make sure that your brands, your innovation, your line extensions are building like the chart on the right, steadily and sustainably. So 4 tips to remember, alluded to this, bigger is not always better. From a data side, when brands are trying to identify where should I be that I'm not today, I very rarely do that share calculation. A lot of times I'm saying, okay, what is your point of differentiation? Are you plant-based energy? Then let's go ahead and say all right, total store across the US, what's the share of plant-based energy? Is it 15% on average? So let's quickly look at what retailers have less than 15% on shelf, because that story crafts itself. You can go to those retailers and you've already identified this is a list of retailers where I can go and my point of differentiation is closing a gap. So just understanding that it's important to understand how much volume flows through these stores. If you were to get 1%, 5%, what does that amount to? These are important KPIs, but it shouldn't be the only indicator of success in retail. The right vibe is the second pillar. Right vibe, it sounds fun, but choose a retailer whose mission aligns with yours. We heard a lot about this from the panel at NOSH, but remain intact with the core values of your brand and understand who are you trying to reach with this product and where are they shopping. You want to make sure that the retailer is a good fit for your brand just as much as you're a good fit for that retailer. And so from a KPI perspective, a lot of the time it's looking at pricing structure. Yes, it's good to have diversification in pricing tiers, but if your price point is $3 above everything else on shelf, it's probably not a good fit. So understanding, what's going on shelf at that retailer, where do you fit in? Bucket 3 is mastering the metrics. So obviously I've already been spitting them out. But if you do have access to data, there's a lot of metrics that you can use. So a lot of times we're looking at space to sales. So for the attributes for your product, if you do have a unique flavor profile, can you find retailers that don't have this? Like Joanie mentioned, if cherry limeade is everywhere and there's a surgence of this across functional beverage, if you have that item, find retailers that don't and go to them with that value proposition. If you don't have access to data, go walk in stores and see what the pricing landscape looks like. See how many items are flagged as local. Visit the retailer's website. It's really remarkable how many of them will list their priorities for the year and their goals. And showing up to those meetings prepared to say, I know you're trying to do this and I'm going to help you get there by doing Z is really impactful. And then scale accordingly. So this really comes back to everything internal to your business. But, what are your operations? What's your budget? For building distribution to the consumer, you're just building presence. But to the retailer, you're building relationships. So it's really important that, you're scaling at a rate that you can succeed because you don't want to burn those bridges too soon.
Awesome. So kind of thinking about the different types of channels and, the differentiating factors of those channels, there's going to be pros and cons to both. So within conventional and within natural, there's going to be certain characteristics and certain qualifications that make them different and might, appeal to one brand more than the other, or might make a retailer a better fit versus the other. When I think about this, it kind of, again, really circles back to what Kaitlin's been honing in on, is find a retailer that is backed by, your mission, your type of product. Find where it's a good fit. Not only where is there a void, but, do you align with the types of products that they're selling? And scalability. So, Walmart comes to you and they say, we're going to get you in 5,000 stores. That's amazing. Can you do that? Do you have, the supply chain to keep up with that demand? Can you make that happen? If not, be truthful, be honest, because you don't want to scale too much too soon. We kind of like to say, go deep and like in one retailer versus very widespread across a lot of retailers, just to gain that presence, gain that exposure, gain that like consumer base. Because once you have that, deep penetration in one retailer, whether it's small or not, you have so much runway then to go off of when you meet with other retailers to, prove what you've done in that one retailer. So it's really, really beneficial and impactful to be able to kind of get that case study for yourself, use that to your advantage, and then start to scale your business across, other retailers, keeping in mind, what makes each retailer different and what works for you and what doesn't. So this, again, kind of goes back to that idea of the pitch, but it's really, the worst mistake ever is probably a little bit dramatic. But what we really want to say is, the same pitch is not going to be, you don't want to take the same pitch to every single person. There's a lot to be said about the type of retailer you're meeting with, what their current assortment looks like, a wide variety of variables. So, thinking about the category, the consumer, and the competition, make sure you come prepared to kind of talk about all three of those based on the retailer or the investor that you're meeting with. Are these brands that you're, pinning yourself against, does that retailer even sell them? Make sure it's relevant. In terms of the consumer, is the type of product you're offering, is that the type of consumer that this retailer is usually going after? Is that the consumer that's usually in their stores? And competition. So I kind of mentioned that one. Category. So, what's the growth trajectory? Is there a white space opportunity in the category? What does performance look like? Maybe from a total channel level to just this one retailer. And I think, what I see time and time again with clients' retail pitches is the lack of data included. And I think, when people hear data, they hear expensive, and it's hard for them to find ways to incorporate it into their sales story. And so I think when you're thinking about this retail pitch, whatever retailer it may be, leverage public resources. Mintel, Spins has great thought leadership on our website. Get those data points that are relevant to your brand and to the meeting that you're about to have, because there is plenty out there. And when you can really just kind of add in a little bit of a data tidbit, it can pay dividends in terms of, making that compelling story.
Yeah, so leveraging data, as Joanie mentioned, you can go on Google Trends, like the slide we presented earlier. But if you do have access to data, there's a lot you can do from a scorecard approach, just with 4 simple measures. So if you're trying to explore, where does it make sense for me to go after distribution with my product, this is a really great starting point. Like, look at dollar volume. How much dollar volume is this category doing across the retailers? And based on the saturation of brand landscape there, like, what do you think you could take and share? So again, what's the size of the pie? Try and quantify that as best you can. And what size slice do you think you could take of that pie? And that serves as, one guiding post in terms of the resulting sales that you think you could achieve across retailers. As Joanie mentioned, another one is dollar% change. And I think this one can be really impactful because retail partners love when you come to them solving their problems for them. And so for me, I'm looking at benchmarks across the channel. So we told you today, ready-to-drink beverage is up 8% across channel. So find retailers that are lagging behind that benchmark and go to them and solve that problem. Say, I notice this is a huge growth-driving segment. You're lagging behind growth, and here's how I can help. And if you don't have access to data, once again, like Joanie mentioned, there's thought leadership with these quantifiable data points. Find the ones that align with your brand and add them into a slide. And you can go and walk these stores and identify white space on shelf without the data set readily available. I would say one of the most important is ARP. So again, especially with what you can spend on promo, it's really important to make sure that you're entering with the price point that you've established where you're gonna succeed. And so just being cognizant of the different price structure across retailers and making sure that you're entering ones where, you fit in, or if you're at a premium, that you can convey why to the consumer at shelf. And so I wouldn't be turned off by a price point lower than yours. I would just be prepared to justify, what attributes or what enhanced value are you providing that can command that higher price point. And then last but not least is the number of new items selling. Again, this is in our data, probably a little harder to quantify without, but it is very helpful to understand what new products have launched at these retailers and what's been successful. So to Joanie's point with investor pitches, learn from the past and help that inform the patterns to make sure you're set up for success. Quick AI case study because everyone loves AI. So here's a bag of chips I made, just putting what I just said into practice. So, we're at retailer X. They do $32 million of volume in tortilla chips. They are up 3.5% across tortilla chips. However, the natural channel at large is up double that rate, 7%. The average price for tortilla chips is $4.50, and they launched 25 new items. Best performing were sea salt flavor and triangle shapes. So putting that into practice, size of the pie, $32 million. What do you think you could reasonably take of that, and what does that amount to? So if you could achieve 5% share, that would be $1.6 million. Right there, that's a huge knowledge base as you're building your brand. It's also important to know the retailer is underperforming. You already have your sell story crafting itself here. You're up 3.5, the channel is up 7. Let me help you get there. We want to make sure we're capitalizing on that growth rate observed at the channel level. Your brand is, in line, 50 cents above, that's okay. Just be prepared with your packaging and messaging with your brand to communicate why you command a 50-cent higher price point. I think it can definitely be a lever for success to diversify pricing on shelf. There's plenty of research out there about premium pricing, diversification, expanding categories. Just be prepared to speak to that. And then the top performing items are very similar to yours. And so this is where that's important, because it could behoove you to go somewhere that didn't just recently launch a bunch that are very similar to yours. So, it goes both ways. They've been successful. Do you think you have a distinction point that could make yours successful on top of that? If not, it might be pretty steep competition on that shelf. And to Joanie's point earlier, this is really why we want a baseline of smart distribution, because you want to drive fast velocities and then use that in your future pitch decks to other retailers. I'm number one velocity where I am. So you want to make sure where you are is smart and strong.
Awesome. And then to kind of wrap it up, we'll tell a cautionary tale. The idea being, again, around these themes of too much too soon, scaling too big too fast. So in this example, we're looking at a plant-based brand. It plays in about 1 to 2 categories, and it's doing really well. There's a lot of runway. It gets it gets investment in their business. Investors are very excited about it. There's a lot of hype around it, and they think it's going to do really well. And then that's where we see kind of the downfall of plant-based products. They get distribution in all of these stores, and all of a sudden, the demand for plant-based products starts to decrease. As a result, their velocities are impacted. Their velocity goes down. They're not, providing a ton of incrementality to the category, and that leads to discontinuation of items and eventually, hopefully not, potential bankruptcy. So, the idea is like no matter how good it can seem, you always want to kind of take a step back and level set your expectations. Slow is going to be better. Don't scale too fast too soon. You want to really, set yourself up for success. And to do that, you need to kind of take it slow and steady. The smarter path, so essentially just the flip of the cautionary tale, is the idea of, again, the same plant-based brand, 1 to 2 subcategories, they're doing well. They've identified mission-aligned, features of their brand that differentiate themselves in the market. They use those to their advantage. They understand that plant-based products might be struggling, so they implement a very savvy promotional strategy to still drive that traction. Although plant-based might be struggling, there's still a consumer base out there. There's still consumers that are ready to try it out. How do you generate trial in a category that is struggling? You implement promotions. So doing that in a very strategic way can be huge. So that step 4 is, as a result of that, you're looking at that strong growth. As a result of your promotional strategy, your velocity went up. Now you're seeing growth. It took a long time to get here, but you've made it exactly where you want to be due to, implementing that very logical and rational strategy behind it all. And then you become the most amazing brand ever. So, the idea really just start slow. Slow and steady wins the race. It's not, a sprint. Take your time and really kind of identify the best strategy for your business given the market and the current trends that are going on.